Absalom and Achitophel is a famous satirical poem by John Dryden. It is written in rhyming couplets and it was first published in 1681. Absalom and Achitophel retells the biblical story of Absalom's rebellion against his father, King David. In this poem, Dryden uses this story as an allegory to comment on political events happening during his own time, specifically the exclusion crisis which happened between 1679 to 1681, which involved attempts to prevent King Charles II's brother James from becoming king. The poem also refers to the popish plot of 1678, a supposed Catholic conspiracy against the English government. Let's see the important characters in the poem. Absalom is the central character of the poem. He is the beloved but illegitimate son of King David. David, the benevolent king of Israel, lacks a legitimate heir to the throne, making Absalom his favored successor. Achitophel, a cunning advisor to King David, emerges as the primary antagonist in the narrative. Among all the dissenting voices in David's court, Achitophel wields the greatest influence plotting against David's rule. David, renowned as the third king of Israel, rules with compassion and fairness. Despite his virtues, his lack of a male heir raises concerns about the succession of the throne. Saul, the inaugural king of Israel, serves as a pivotal figure in the poem. In Dryden's rendition, the Jews reject God's direct rule in favor of Saul's monarchy, reflecting their discontent with the divine governance. David's brother, though absent from the poem, looms large as the presumptive heir to the throne. Achitophel and Absalom frequently allude to the impending transfer of power upon David's demise. Korah, a key ally of Achitophel, manipulates circumstances to discredit David's brother and rally support for Absalom's claim to the throne. Shimei, another ally of Achitophel, wields significant influence despite his dubious character, further complicating David's reign with his deceitful practices. Simri, characterized as a comical figure by Dryden, poses little threat to David's rule despite his association with Achitophel's faction. Pharaoh, an ally of David, harbors ulterior motives and seeks to exploit the king's vulnerability. Let's see the summary of the poem. In ancient times, before religious doctrines condemned polygamy, men were not restricted to one woman. David, the monarch of Israel, exemplified this custom, fathering sons with multiple women alongside his queen Michal. Though these sons lacked royal legitimacy, Absalom stood out among them, cherished and esteemed by both his father and the people. Possessing a striking appearance and noble bearing, Absalom earned renown as a valiant warrior in foreign conflicts. David harbored a secret delight in watching Absalom mature, seeing in him a reflection of his own youthful vigor. During David's tranquil reign, murmurs of discontent brewed among the Israelites, a restless and discontent population yearning for greater freedoms. Stirred by the resurfacing ideals of good old cause, they sought to challenge the authority of kings and elevate the status of commonwealths. The indigenous Jebusites native to the land found themselves marginalized and oppressed, facing heightened taxes, land seizures, and disparagement of their beliefs. They plotted clandestinely to regain their rights. Their scheme, lacking in practicality yet bearing profound consequences, infiltrated all echelons of society, sparking widespread turmoil and resistance against David's rule. From within the ranks of government emerged Achitophel, a cunning and ambitious figure whose nature sought either dominion or destruction of the established order. Feigning alliance to David, Achitophel skillfully manipulated discontent, enlisting Absalom as a figurehead for the rebellion. Exploiting the cyclical nature of Israel's history of kinship, Achitophel orchestrated the call for a new monarch, envisioning Absalom as the ideal candidate to wield power. Tensions simmered and factions vied for control. The stage was set for a dramatic upheaval in the governance of Israel, driven by a complex interplay of ambition, resentment, and political intrigue. Achitophel opens by publicly extolling the birth of Absalom as a moment of royal significance, heralding him as the potential savior of the Jewish people. He artfully suggests that Absalom's very existence is an answer to their collective prayers. As Absalom's name becomes a household word, even the youngest among them learn to utter it with reverence. Achitophel views a tapestry of flattery, lauding Absalom's virtues and drawing parallels between his situation and David's own ascent to the throne during his exile in Gath. With the populace growing restless and clamoring for change, Achitophel believes that if Absalom, with his royal lineage, lends his voice to their cause, they will inevitably rally behind him. Yet, despite the allure of such ambition, Absalom remains grounded. He acknowledges David's unassailable right to the crown, recognizing him as the benevolent ruler whose reluctance to spill blood earns him respect and admiration. Absalom acknowledges the generosity of his father, who has bestowed upon him everything except the crown, assuring him that it rightfully belongs to another whose worthiness cannot be denied. The line of succession Absalom concedes flows down from David's brother, a fact that cannot be overlooked despite any personal animosity that may exist. While Absalom harbors a longing for royal birthright, he understands the gravity of coveting power that rightfully belongs to another, a sentiment he deems akin to his godlike proportions. Achitophel, however, persists in his persuasion, appealing to Absalom's sense of destiny and the supposed weakness of David's reign. In Achitophel's eyes, the moment is ripe for Absalom to seize the crown, exploiting any missteps made by David, such as lavish spending or entanglement in costly foreign conflicts. He portrays David's brother as an undesirable successor, banking on public sentiment to sway in Absalom's favor. Achitophel insists that the people have a right to choose their sovereign, emphasizing the urgency of acting now before the opportunity slips away. To execute his scheme, Achitophel rallies various dissidents across Israel with a singular goal: to strip David of his power and bestow it upon Absalom. Among his accomplices are Zimri, Balaam, and Caleb, but none wield as much influence as Shimei. Known for his exploitation of the populace, Shimei is appointed magistrate, enabling him to legalize treason and manipulate judicial proceedings to favor the king's adversaries. At the heart of the plot lies Korah, a cunning priest whose deceit remains concealed behind a facade of impeccable memory. Absalom, surrounded by such allies, addresses the people, feigning empathy for their plight and professing love for his father while lamenting the threat to their freedom. Shedding a tear, he declares his tears as the only offering he can give to their cause. As the crowds acclaim Absalom, he embarks on a royal procession with Achitophel, touring Israel to garner support, while Achitophel discreetly identifies potentials. Yet, amidst the spectacle, a voice cries out against the charade, denouncing Absalom's procession as a guise for war and warning the dangers of destabilizing the monarchy. Loyalty to David persists, embodied by figures like Barzillai, Zadok, Sargon of Jerusalem, and Amiel, who covertly undermines David's adversaries from within. Informed by Absalom's treachery and Achitophel's deceit, David addresses the people, acknowledging his paternal bias but asserting his authority as king. He warns Absalom that attempt to usurp the throne is futile and vows to defend his reign with force if necessary. Thunder punctuates David's words, a sign of divine support for his rightful rule. With steely resolve, David reminds the Jews of his readiness to confront any challenge, urging them to heed the fury of a patient man. As the skies rumble, every Jew is reminded of their true sovereign. Absalom and Achitophel is more than a mere retelling of the biblical tale of David and his rebellious son Absalom. It serves as a biting satire of the political turmoil in England during the late 17th century. This period was marked by the Popish plot of 1678, a fabricated conspiracy alleging a Catholic plot to assassinate King Charles II, which fueled anti-Catholic hysteria and led to the exclusion crisis of 1679 to 1681. This crisis saw attempts to exclude Charles's Catholic brother James from the royal succession. Dryden's poem cleverly employs allegory to critique these events. Through the character of Achitophel, who stirs up discord among the Jews, Dryden parallels the Popish plot, suggesting it was a ploy to sow division between King Charles II and Parliament. The reference to the good old cause evokes the Puritan rebellion of the English Civil War, implying that the Popish plot is a revival of past attempts to overthrow monarchy. The poem portrays the Popish plot as a farce, with baseless accusations against James and Queen Catherine serving as a pageant show, masking ulterior motives. Dryden suggests that the plot's failure was inevitable due to its lack of wisdom, but it still had grave consequences, stoking anti-Catholic sentiment and reigniting tensions between Parliament and monarchy. In this poem, Dryden casts a critical eye on the men who aligned themselves with Achitophel's scheme to undermine David's authority, drawing parallels to the politicians who supported the exclusion bill. These figures are depicted as lacking in both wisdom and discretion, indulging in excessive talk while failing to grasp the gravity of their actions. Dryden suggests that their proposed legislation from the throne is not only misguided but also perilous. Achitophel, the mastermind behind the plot to incite Absalom against his father, is portrayed as a nefarious figure driven by a lust for power. He is compared to Anthony Ashley Cooper, Earl of Shaftesbury, a leading advocate for the exclusion bill, who sought to advance his own political agenda by any means necessary. Dryden implies that Shaftesbury's ultimate aim was to either seize control of the government or dismantle it entirely. Among Achitophel's supporters are Balaam and Caleb, depicted as minor politicians with little influence or insight. These characters represent Theophilus Hastings and Arthur Capel, both proponents of the exclusion bill within the Whig Party. Dryden suggests that their involvement in the plot is motivated more by personal ambition than genuine concern for the vision. Dryden reserves his harshest criticism for figures like Jonas, symbolizing Sir William Jones, who wield considerable power and influence. As Attorney General, Jones played a key role in prosecuting Catholics during the Popish plot. Furthering the narrative of religious prosecution, Dryden warns of the dangerous consequences that can arise when individuals like Jones collaborate with ambitious politicians like Shaftesbury, capable of enacting laws that subvert the stability of the country and the monarchy. As Achitophel and his allies gain momentum, they manage to sway public opinion and even infect the highest echelons of authority, symbolized by the Sanhedrins paralleling the English Parliament. Dryden's satire serves as a cautionary tale, urging the people of England and Parliament to see through the facade of Popish plot and the exclusion crisis, recognizing them as contrived schemes designed by James II, a Catholic from the line of succession. In Absalom and Achitophel, power and ambition drive the narrative. With King David portrayed as possessing theoretical power and lacking ambition in practice, according to Achitophel, David's counselor, The king's mild nature and reluctance to assert authority render him weak in the eyes of ambitious individuals like himself. Achitophel sees David's hesitance to wield force as a sign of weakness, seizing the opportunity to manipulate Absalom into challenging his father's role. Absalom, influenced by Achitophel's ambition, power hungry, eventually aspiring to ascend his father's throne. Dryden suggests that while some ambition is commendable, attempting to seize power unlawfully is a grievous sin. David's mildness and willingness to appease the people create fertile ground for individuals like Achitophel to exploit. Dryden portrays Achitophel as wise, bold, and discontented with his current level of power. Ambitious and impatient, Achitophel is depicted as willing to resort to deceit and manipulation to achieve his goals. He feigns loyalty to the king while secretly plotting to undermine him and seize control of the state. Dryden describes Achitophel as disillusioned with a lawful fame and discontentment, desiring greater power and influence. Disdainful of the golden fruit of easy power, he instead seeks to upend the existing order to attain a higher position for himself. Achitophel cloaks his ambitions in the guise of championing people's cause, using their discontent as a shield to mask his true intentions. Dryden's portrayal of power and ambition in the poem warns against the dangers of unchecked ambition and betrayal of lawful authority. Achitophel's relentless sense of integrity and loyalty serves as a cautionary tale of the corrupting influence of ambition. Absalom's initial ambitions for power are deemed reasonable as he garners renown through his military exploits. However, his desire for greatness soon grows insatiable, leading him to covet his father's throne despite knowing it is not rightfully his. Absalom manipulates the people by portraying himself as powerless and downtrodden, leveraging their sympathy to rally support against King David. King David, though outwardly appearing to wield waning power, asserts his conviction. Addressing the Israelites from his royal throne, he speaks with commanding authority, reminding them that his power is ordained by God and cannot challenge by earthly ambitions. David warns of the consequences for those who dare to oppose him, invoking the sword of justice if necessary. Despite his preference for restraint, David is prepared to wield his power forcefully when provoked, confident in its superiority over any earthly attempts to subvert it. As David addresses the Israelites, thunder reverberates through the sky, symbolizing divine confirmation of his absolute authority. Dryden uses his imagery to underscore the unassailable nature of David's power, drawing parallels to the divine legitimacy of King Charles II's reign. Just as David's power is affirmed by God, Dryden suggests that Charles's authority is similarly ordained and cannot be challenged, whether by his illegitimate son, the Duke of Monmouth, or by any other ambitious contender. In portraying David's unwavering assertion of authority, Dryden asserts the divine right of kings and warns against the folly of attempting to usurp or undermine legitimate rule. Just as David's power remains unshaken in the face of rebellion, Dryden implies that Charles II's authority is sacrosanct, rooted in divine sanction, and impervious to the machinations of